Spring Television. Ours it is.
And welcome to Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now the headlines. Bandits reportedly killed at least 9 people in Kaduna State. Outside Nigeria, Russia claims to have fully captured Ukraine's Bakhmut. Warring factions in Sudan agree to 7-day ceasefire following talks at Jeddah. My name is Okoyemuni. At least 9 people have been reportedly killed by bandits during an attack at Ungwan Dakwa village in Birnin Gwari local government area of Kaduna State. The House of Assembly member-elect for Birnin Gwari State constituency, Yahya Gwari, confirmed the incident to journalists today. Gwari said the bandits stormed his community at about 2 p.m. yesterday and immediately opened fire on the innocent residents who were going about their daily duties. He said some villagers sustained varying degrees of injuries during the attack and were rushed to hospitals at neighboring Funtua in Katsina State for treatment, while most of the villagers fled from their homes due to fear of a fresh attack by the bandits. Kaduna is one of the northwestern states that is worst hit by bandits who have continued to wreak havoc in the region. Operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, have intercepted a large consignment of methamphetamine concealed in powdered custard containers as part of a consolidated cargo going to London, United Kingdom at the Sako Export Shed of Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Ikeja, Lagos. The illicit drug consignment weighing 30.10 kilograms with a street value of 567 million naira was detected and seized by NDLEA operatives at the airport on Tuesday. This was swiftly followed by a series of follow-up operations that led to the arrest of a freight agent, Nwobodo Chidebere, a female suspect, Chioma Akuta, and the drug lord behind the shipment, Charles Eze, who was arrested in a hotel in Lagos on Thursday. Eze claims he is a businessman and deals in articles in Onitsha, Anambra State, where investigations revealed he lived with his wife and children in London until 10th December 2022, when he fled to Nigeria after his involvement in a drug-related offense in the UK. Meanwhile, NDLEA operatives in Adamawa on the 15th of May arrested a 32-year-old notorious drug dealer, Ikechukwu Uzoma, in Mobi area of the state with 1 kilogram of skunk. Ikechukwu had twice been arrested in the past and convicted for the same offense. Outside Nigeria, Russia has claimed to have fully captured Ukraine's Bakhmut, with President Vladimir Putin congratulating his troops and the mercenary Wagner Group for taking the largely leveled eastern city. The Russian announcement came hours after Kiev said the battle was still continuing while admitting the situation was critical. Bakhmut, a town that once had a population of 70,000 people, has been the scene of the longest and bloodiest battle in Russia's 15-month war in Ukraine. The fall of Bakhmut, where both Russia and Ukraine are believed to have suffered huge losses, would represent Moscow's first big victory in the conflict in more than 10 months. The Russian president said those who had distinguished themselves will be given awards. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Bakhmut is completely destroyed, but has denied that Russia has won the bloody battle for the city. The Wagner Russian paramilitary claimed to have captured the city. Today, President Vladimir Putin said Russia had won the battle for Bakhmut and that all troops who had excelled will get state awards. But a spokesman for Ukraine's Eastern Operational Command later told journalists that Ukraine still controlled several buildings in the southwest of Bakhmut and was preparing for a counterattack. He said Ukraine's position was very difficult because Russia had destroyed all the city's infrastructure, which limited the number of defensive positions. At a press conference held at the G7 summit in Hiroshima today, Zelensky said Ukraine's military in Bakhmut was accomplishing a very important mission.
I think no, but you have to understand that there is nothing. They destroyed everything. There are no buildings. It's a pity. It's tragedy, but for today, Bakhmut is only in our hearts. There is nothing on this place. So just ground and a lot of dead Russians, but they came to us. So that our defenders in Bakhmut, they did strong work, and of course we appreciate them for their great job.
In the meantime, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has condemned Russia and pledged unwavering solidarity with Ukraine in an address condemning attempts anywhere to change the status quo by force. Speaking against the backdrop of the atomic bomb dome in Japan's Hiroshima, the site of the world's first nuclear weapon attack, Kishida said Moscow's invasion of Ukraine had struck at the very foundation of international order. Kishida said Japan's mission as G7 host will be to firmly uphold the free and open international order based on the rule of law and to show Japan's resolve to fully defend peace and prosperity. In another development, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak had said China posed the greatest challenge of age in regards to global security and prosperity, and that it was increasingly authoritarian at home and abroad. Leaders of the world's richest democracies made clear to Beijing their stance on divisive issues such as the Indo-Pacific and Taiwan, but the most important part of the message centered on what they called economic cohesion. The G7 also plans to strengthen supply chains for important goods such as minerals and semiconductors and beef up digital infrastructure to prevent hacking and stealing of technology.
The G7 also demonstrated unity of purpose on China. China poses the biggest challenge of our age to global security and prosperity. They are increasingly authoritarian at home and assertive abroad. And as the G7 have showed, the UK's response is completely aligned with our allies. This is all about de-risking, not decoupling. And with the G7, we are taking steps to prevent China from using economic coercion to interfere in the sovereign affairs of others. On the substantive issue of Ukraine and what this summit means for Ukraine, I think there are probably three important things for me. The first is President Zelensky's presence here. I think that in and of itself was a very powerful moment to see President Zelensky standing shoulder to shoulder with his G7 allies. I think sends a powerful message to Russia and the world that we are united behind President Zelensky and his people and will continue to support him for as long as it takes.
Still on the Russia-Ukraine war, U.S. President Joe Biden has announced a new $375 million package of military aid to Ukraine today and told President Volodymyr Zelensky that the United States was doing all it could to strengthen Ukraine's defense for the war with Russia. Meeting with the Ukrainian leader on the sidelines of a G7 summit of world leaders in Hiroshima, Japan, Biden said the military aid package included ammunition, artillery, armored vehicles, and training. In the meeting, Biden stressed his country's readiness to help build Ukraine's long-term capacity to defend against and deter Russian aggression. Biden also discussed the U.S. support for a joint effort with allied and partner nations to train Ukrainian pilots on fourth-generation fighter aircraft such as the F-16. Meanwhile, Zelensky thanked the United States for the new package and for the financial assistance of $37 billion to date.
Generation. In my private meeting with President Zelensky after the G7 meeting and with his staff, I told him the United States, together with our allies and partners, is going to begin training Ukrainian pilots and fourth-generation fighter aircraft, including F-16s, to strengthen Ukraine's Air Force as part of a long-term commitment to Ukraine's ability to defend itself. We provided to last year all that they needed to deal with what they were dealing with at the moment, and that's when now we're moving in the direction of putting them in a position to be able to defend themselves.
In other news, the International Criminal Court says it is undeterred by Russia putting its chief prosecutor on a wanted list. It comes 2 months after the ICC's Karim Khan issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin. In a statement, the court said the move was an attempt to undermine its lawful mandate to ensure accountability for the gravest crimes. Russia, which is not an ICC member, previously described the warrant against Putin as being void. Mr. Khan, a British lawyer, issued the arrest warrant for President Putin in March, alleging that he was responsible for war crimes and has focused its claims on the unlawful deportation of children from Ukraine to Russia. According to officials in Kiev, more than 16,000 children are thought to have been forcibly transferred to Russia from Ukraine since the war began. Here in Africa, warring factions in Sudan have agreed to a 7-day ceasefire following talks in the Saudi Arabian city of Jeddah, as fighting that has killed hundreds and displaced more than 1 million entered its 6th week. According to a statement, the ceasefire agreement was signed late yesterday. The sponsors of the talks, the United States and Saudi Arabia, said in their joint statement that the ceasefire would take effect 48 hours after. The statement added that numerous previous ceasefire agreements were violated, but this agreement will be enforced by a U.S., Saudi, and international supported monitoring mechanism. The agreement also calls for distributing humanitarian assistance, restoring essential services, and withdrawing forces from hospitals and essential public facilities. The fighting between Sudan's army and paramilitary rapid support forces has plunged the country into chaos as stocks of food, cash, and essentials are rapidly dwindling, and mass looting has hit banks, embassies, aid warehouses, and even churches. Elsewhere, German police say they are investigating the possible poisoning of 2 Russian exiles who last month attended a conference in Berlin organized by Russian Kremlin critic Mikhail Khodorkovsky. Berlin police told journalists today that a file had been opened after a German newspaper said 2 women reported symptoms that suggested possible poisoning. The Berlin police spokesman said the investigation was being handled by the State Security Unit, a specialized team that examines cases related to terrorism or politically motivated crimes. Russian investigative media outlet Agence Tivo last week published a report saying 2 participants who attended an April 29th to 30th meeting of Russian dissidents in Berlin experienced health problems. One participant, identified as a journalist who had recently left Russia, experienced unspecified symptoms during the event. You're watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. We'll be right back after this break.
artist, playwright, and icon of Yoruba thematic arts. Duro Ladipo was born December 18, 1931 in Osogbo, southwest Nigeria. His clergyman father christened him Timothy. His other names, Duro Dola, Duro Shomo, Duro Rike, reflected his persona and the circumstances that surrounded his birth. The legendary stage actor had in several public fora identified himself as one of the greatest abikus born to die in this world. Family records reveal how he was born and died 13 times. The intertwining names he bore thus lent credence to his spiritism. Duro Ladipo was one of the best known and world-acclaimed Yoruba dramatists to emerge from post-colonial Africa. His notable works, Obakoso, Obawaja, and Moremi, took him beyond Africa to several parts of the world. By the time Duro Ladipo died on 11 March 1978, Nigeria's first cultural ambassador had acquired a towering image as an artist whose works adorned the frontage of Trenchard Hall, University of Ibadan. Western Spring Television identifies Duro Ladipo as a major character in history. Fumilayo Ransom Kuti was an educationist and advocate of women's rights. She was recognized for her vitriolic comments against colonial policy of taxation as it affected the Nigerian women. Bere, as fondly addressed by her women followers, Fumilayo championed the initiation of universal adult suffrage, which gave an unprecedented leeway for women to contest elective offices and power to exercise voting rights. Married to a foremost educationist and teacher, Israel Oladoto Ransom Kuti, the first president of Nigeria Union of Teachers, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti was the mother of children who inherited her spirit of activism. Olufela and Be Ololari, the former, a renowned musical legend. She was the first female student of Abeokuta Grammar School and the first female to own and drive a car in Nigeria. The award recipient of Member of Order of Nigeria MON and Lenin Peace Prize, was born 25th October 1900 and was killed on 13th April 1978 by rampaging road soldiers in Lagos. Western Spring Television identifies Fumilayo Ransom Kuti as a watershed character in history.
Welcome back on Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now to the rest of the stories. In Asia, Bahrain says it will restore full diplomatic relations with Lebanon following a row over the Saudi-led military intervention in Yemen that saw the countries break ties for a year and a half. Lebanon's Prime Minister Najib Mikati said the country appreciated the decision and welcomes it. Bahrain and other Gulf countries followed Saudi Arabia in recalling their diplomats from Lebanon in October 2021 after the then Information Minister George Kodai was quoted as criticizing the Saudi role in the war in Yemen, which has produced what the United Nations describes as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Kodashi said in an interview he gave a month before his appointment that Iran-aligned Houthis were defending themselves against an internal aggression in Yemen. In response, Riyadh recalled its ambassador and ordered Lebanon's envoy to leave the kingdom. The restoration of ties comes amidst a number of other efforts to resolve regional disputes, including bringing Syria back into the Arab League. In the Middle East, Israel's far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has entered the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in occupied East Jerusalem and declared Israel was in charge, drawing condemnation from Palestinians after months of escalating tension and violence. The comments during his early morning visit today to the compound came days after groups of Jewish youth scuffled with Palestinians and chanted racist slogans during the annual far-right flag march through the Old City. The event held on Jerusalem Day, which marks the 1967 capture and annexation of East Jerusalem, has led to violence in recent years as far-right Israelis shout provocative slogans and insults, as well as physically attack Palestinians and even journalists. In 2021, tensions around Al-Aqsa were followed by an 11-day Israeli assault on the Gaza Strip. Under the status quo arrangement, non-Muslims may visit the site in the heart of the old city but are not allowed to pray. However, Jewish visitors have been increasingly defying the ban. In Europe, 3 men died today in an assault rifle attack in the French port city of Marseille, which has seen a surge of drug-related gang murders in recent months. Police said the 3 were part of a group of 5 men in their 20s who left a nightclub shortly after 5 a.m. and were driving away when their car was attacked by unknown men with Kalashnikov rifles. The 2 survivors of the attack, which took place in a residential neighborhood of Marseille, France's second biggest city, were unarmed and fled the scene, same as the shooters. Regional Prefect Frederic Camilleri told reporters at the scene that the entire police force has been mobilized to find the perpetrators of the crimes and to dismantle the networks of the traffickers behind the violence. This weekend alone, police had arrested 5 people for possession of firearms linked to the drugs trade and seized the 3 Kalashnikov assault rifles, a submachine gun, and a handgun. According to reports, the latest attack brings the number of drug-related homicides in Marseille since the start of the year to 21. In business, President Muhammadu Buhari will tomorrow commission the 650,000 BPD Dangote Petroleum Refinery and Petrochemicals. According to a Twitter statement by the Dangote Group, the refinery will be producing premium motor spirit, also known as petrol, diesel, aviation jet fuel, and dual-purpose kerosene, among other refined products. Speaking about the plant, the CEO of Dangote Petroleum Refinery and Petrochemicals, Sanjay Gupta, stated that everything in the plant, by way of size, is the first, adding that it is the largest single-train refinery in the world.
Everything in this plant, by way of size, is the first. It is the single largest single-train refinery in the world. There is no column which can process 650,000 barrels per day in one column, first of its kind. The capacity of RFCC builds the next best by miles. This is a 10 MMTPA plant. Maximum which you have seen is 6-7. This is way ahead of that. And to add to that, this is an RFCC. This is a lot more complex one. You have probably one of the biggest hydrocrackers designed on a mild hydrocracking route. About upwards of 7.5 million tons capacity. One of the biggest MS blocks which you can have in the world. The towers which you see, the sizes of the furnaces, the reactor regenerator, it has touched the elastic limits of mechanical design. Beyond this, in a single train, is practically not possible.
Now to sports. At least 12 people have died after a crash at a football stadium in El Salvador's capital, San Salvador. According to officials, the incident occurred during a match between local team Alianza and the Santa Ana-based team FAS at Coastland Stadium. The match was subsequently suspended. President Nayib Bukele described the event as unprecedented and said an exhaustive investigation will be launched. The disaster reportedly occurred after a large number of fans tried to enter the venue after the gates had been closed. Officials believed some fans had been sold fake tickets and said that an investigation was on the way. Britain's Andy Murray has withdrawn from the French Open to prioritize the grass court season in the build-up to Wimbledon. The 36-year-old Murray has only played at Roland Garros once since 2017. The 3-time Grand Slam champion won the clay court challenger event in Aix-en-Provence in May, but has struggled for consistency on the surface. Meanwhile, the French Open, the second Grand Slam of the year, takes place from 28th May to 11th June. Murray lost to longtime rival Stan Wawrinka in Bordeaux earlier this week and also had early exits at the ATP Tour events in Rome, Madrid, and Monte Carlo. World lightweight champion Devin Haney has retained his titles at the MGM Grand Garden, Las Vegas. Lomachenko dominated the latter rounds in the bout on Saturday evening and outpunched Haney. American Haney won by unanimous decision despite landing 110 punches to Ukraine's Lomachenko 124 at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas. 24-year-old Haney is unbeaten in 30 fights, which includes 15 knockouts. He became boxing's youngest undisputed champion when he beat Australia's George Kambosos last year, and is also the first fighter to hold all 4 belts in the lightweight division. Before we end the Spring Global, here's a recap of our top stories. At least 9 people have been reportedly killed by bandits during an attack at Ungwandakwa village near Dogon Nawa ward in Bilining Gwari local government area of Kaduna State. Outside Nigeria, Russia has claimed to have fully captured Ukraine's Bakhmut, with President Vladimir Putin congratulating his troops and the mercenary Wagner Group for taking the largely leveled eastern city. Here in Africa, warring factions in Sudan have agreed to a 7-day ceasefire following talks in the Saudi Arabian city of Jeddah, as fighting that has killed hundreds and displaced more than 1 million entered its 6th week. You can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. I am Okoye Muni. Thanks for watching.